Hi, my name is Ashley, and today I'm going to show you how to make a card using the Lucky Workshop Kit from Close to My Heart. I'm also going to show you how to do a specific skill called sponge distressing. And if you see here, I'm taking a sponge and I'm rubbing it on my ink pad, and I'm going to use this ink to distress my paper. And this sponge actually came as a big circular size sponge, and I just chopped that up with my craft scissors into quarters. And I use my quarters, designate each one kind of for a different color family, and this is my blues color family quarter. So as you see here, I'm just taking it and I'm filling my sponge with color from the ink pad, and I am rubbing that ink, kind of dabbing that ink, I should say, along the edge of my patterned paper. And this is patterned paper from the Lucky Workshop Kit. And what I'm doing is I'm just dabbing this all the way around. And as you see, I'm not going too far in on the edge of the paper. And this just gives it kind of a nice antique or distressed look. And this paper already has a little bit of an antique look to it to begin with. And as you can see, I came in a little bit closer on the corners than I did on the sides, which just gives the paper a little bit of variation in the distressing. I'm going to do the same distressing technique to the other pieces of paper that I'm going to put on my card. So I'm going around just a little brown sheet here and distressing it with the ink. And I'm even going to dab a little bit of the ink in the center of my sheet here just to give it a little more distressing since this is a solid color. So you can kind of see how it's a little darker on the edges, and I still have a little bit of distressing in the center as well. And when I lay that down on my pattern paper, you can see it just gives a softer transition from the pattern paper to the solid sheet. So now I'm going to take my solid sheet that I just distressed, and I'm going to stamp on it. And Close to My Heart uses clear stamp blocks, which makes it very easy to see where you're stamping. So these are stamps from the Lucky set again, and as you can see, I'm not using all of this stamp. I am stamping it on, but I'm letting part of that stamp kind of hang over the edge. You can see on the piece of paper that I'm working on that I have part of that ink showing up behind there. So I'm only using part of that. And the great part about using the clear stamps is that I can see exactly where I'm placing that stamp, so I can make each side match one another very nicely. And then I'm going to take my sentiment stamp, which is the Live Life stamp, and I'm going to stamp that right in the center of this sheet. So now I have my sentiment with a little pattern on each side of this sheet of paper, along with all of the distressing that I already did with the sponge. And I'm going to lay that on top of another sheet that I've already distressed, and it's another sheet from that same paper pack, the Lucky paper pack. And I'm going to use my adhesive roller, and I'm going to place that on there, and that's going to stay nicely for me. And then I can adhere that to my card in a little bit. Just like that. So now I'm going to do another design here, and I'm going to take the Fleur-de-Lis stamp from the Lucky set, and I'm putting it on paper that matches the papers I've already used. And I'm going to stamp that right in the center here, and I've already distressed all of the edges of both of these papers. And if you see, I've layered papers. I've got a brown and then a blue on top. And I'm going to take some hemp and I'm going to wrap that around just for some extra decoration, for some dimension to my card. So I'm going to put a little adhesive on the back just to get started, hold my hemp in place. And then I'm going to wrap around and around, and I'm going to tie a little knot in the front. Now you don't want to do this if you're going to mail this through the U.S. Postal Service. So you're going to just stick it out in your mailbox and mail it to somebody, because it does not run through the postal machines very well. If you ever want to mail something with dimension on it, you really need to take it directly to the post office and have it hand stamped. It costs just a little bit more in postage, but it's worth it. I've tried it before where I've put those type of things in my own mailbox just to send it, and on the receiving end, the person you're sending the card to usually has to pay their mail person a few extra cents. So you do not want to do that. So make sure that if you're sending this through the mail that you either get it hand stamped or you do not put dimension elements on your card. So here I'm just going to fray up these corners of the hemp just a little bit, make it look a little more distressed, because the whole theme of this card is kind of an antique distressed look. And this card is great because it's great for guys or gals. Has a little bit more of a masculine feel to it. It kind of reminds me of an Old West feel, even though we are using a fleur-de-lis, which you typically think of as French. The whole coloration and the distressing and general style of this reminds me of something you would see kind of in an Old West saloon. So I think it would be a great card to give to somebody for Father's Day, or a man for his birthday, or just one of those just because I'm thinking about you kind of cards for really anybody. So then I'm going to take all the pretty stuff that I put together, and I'm going to adhere that to my brown cardstock using my adhesive roller and kind of pressing all around to make sure that stays in place really nicely. And there you go, a card using the Lucky Workshop set from Close to My Heart. Enjoy!